Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your hosts, Steve and Jeff. G'day, mate.
How are you, mate?
Good, buddy. Good.
It's just us again.
Just us. Matt's away at the moment with Ken Ware,
Yeah.
actually going through a week worth of training or modules or what have you on the the chaos theory that Ken talks about. Now, anyone who hasn't listened to the podcast before, you're not sure who Ken Ware is, check out our podcast with him.
Yes.
I can't remember what number it was, but Ken Ware is on chaos theory. We've done a couple with him. Absolutely amazing guy.
It is amazing.
Long story short, he's basically found, utilising chaos theory, that he can get paraplegics to walk again, including, and I know that sounds pretty extreme, he was actually featured on 60 Minutes here in Australia. I think it was McLean was his last name.
Yeah.
He was a paraplegic for 25 years, who after working with Ken was able to actually get control over his legs again and actually ran and competed in, I think, a half Ironman.
Yeah, he should have done a full
and
one.
he's working with the Manchester bombing victims. I think he's working with some other people. Actually, I don't know what I can and can't share, but Matt was down there and he's seen a lot of. If I mention them, you'd probably know who they are, or have heard about them. Not potentially celebrities, but you would have heard about them on the news with all sorts of various accidents. And he's helping some of these people. And Matt's going through this at the moment, getting absolutely unbelievable breakthroughs.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a podcast actually on his results with it, and anybody with injuries and anybody with things that just won't budge in their body, that's one to stay tuned for, Matt.
Yeah.
Steve, because Matt's saying he has discovered things about himself that he never even would have known,
It's amazing. And the amazing thing about it is I saw a video of someone he got to walk again after being a paraplegic, and he walked his daughter down the aisle or something on the beach. And that was a video, so we can share that.
The one that amazed me, and again, we spoke about it in the podcast, was the person that I met whose daughter was there. After 5 days, she was about to get rods implanted into her back because she has extreme scoliosis. Within 5 days, her spine was completely straight.
Scoliosis is a curvature of the spine, for those who don't know.
A miracle, man, outside of conventional understood science. And this is the thing, Steve, is like, you got to push the boundaries, you know, and you've got to question everything. And this is, one of our mottos, question everything, because, standard science, or what we understand, as soon as, again, and I always worry when, the science is settled. As far as your understanding is concerned, as we've said before, the Earth was the center of the universe and it was flat.
Yes.
That's trying to make it come back, but
yes, it is.
Don't. And this is the whole thing about it, is that Ken is a pioneer in this movement, and he's getting some undeniable results. So anyway, enough about that. But we're talking about extreme fat loss.
Yes.
Now this came about with Mick.
Yes.
One of our reps who's actually just left us. He's over in the States now, looking after our US accounts. And he said, "Hey guys, have you heard of
DNP?
DNP,
Dinitrophenol is the chemical name, but yeah."
And so, Steve, we're talking, saying Matt's away, so we can have a bit of a play.
Yes, it is a bit of a play.
And we want to talk about various methods that people use for extreme. And I shouldn't say fat loss. I mean, some of it is. The DNP is definitely targeted at fat loss, but we can say weight loss, and some of the extreme measures that people will go to lose weight. And we've mentioned some of these things before, but we're going to pull it all together into one podcast and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. But and Steve, you fill in some of the blanks here, but we're going to talk about DNP, which I believe originally was used as an insecticide
in timber,
that people use, that actually superheats the body so that you can basically burn more calories. Sounds like a good thing.
Without doing exercise.
We'll get into that.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to talk about some of the stuff I'd heard about people actually ingesting bacteria and other things to have rapid weight loss through gastroenteritis and other things like that. Is that right? Right.
Absolutely,
okay.
yeah.
Which just sounds alarming, but these things are true. We're going to talk about lap band. We're going to talk about liposuction. We're going to talk about diuretics.
Yes.
We're going to talk about Duramine.
Yes.
We're going to talk about, what else, Steve?
Clenbuterol.
Clenbuterol, which, and again, we've mentioned that one. That's the horse steroid that's used as a bronchial dilator, which a lot of people use off script.
Yes.
And again, look, the thing is that a lot of people have used some of these things and got results without killing themselves. A lot of them have used it and killed themselves.
Yes.
Or done serious damage. And we're not advocating any of these methods, but we just want to inform you what a lot of people are doing. Now, some of the people that listen to this podcast, Steve, is just going to listen to it for pure entertainment, because it's pretty fascinating,
it's
right?
It's a little bit entertaining at times, a little bit sad, and other times you've got some good stories, you've got some bad stories. But the important thing about this is how the reason why we're doing this, because people are actually doing this.
Well, no, and I was about to say, then you've got the other end of the scale, and some of the people who are a bit more educated, they're aware of the risks and they're doing it, and I don't have a problem with that, Steve. So much so as they're aware of the risks. But like that interview that we did with Anne-Marie as well too, because I'm not an advocate for or against. Some of these things I'm definitely against because there's absolutely no good science. Effectively, you're basically playing Russian roulette with your health.
Yeah.
But some of these people might be using some of these things, and this is really probably a crux of it for some of the things like DNP, is that if people are using it because they've had a friend that's used it that's got good results, you need to be aware of the downside so you don't hurt yourself.
Exactly.
Again, we're not here to say stop it completely, but just you make up your own mind once you're aware of all of the facts.
Yeah, look, what we're not going to talk about today is diet and exercise, and that's the elephant in the room that we should be focusing on. But this is the stuff that's beyond that. This is for people who do it without that, who and some of those things like Duromide you spoke about is a very commonly prescribed drug in Australia, around the world, for people to lose extra weight.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Xenical today, which is another drug.
And we've mentioned that before, as I said, a friend of mine, adult diapers, get your adult diapers out.
Yeah, there's
with
some
the
problems with that.
Leaky bunghole syndrome if you eat too much fat. But
I think the medical term is anal seepage.
Yep.
I don't know if that makes it any better. Probably worse.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't really sound great, does it?
I've got a list of the side effects here that it gets even worse than that, actually. You wouldn't believe it.
Well, Steve, where are we going to start? Are we going to start on DNP?
We've got to start on DNP.
Okay. So DNP, give us the rundown.
Right.
Steve, what is it?
Okay.
Where did it come from?
It
Who
is a
uses
pesticide, and when pests ingest it, it causes them to become hyperthermic. In other words, overheat and die.
Right.
Okay.
Is it still used today?
No.
No.
It was banned in 1938.
Wow.
But before that, it was prescribed by medical doctors for people to lose weight.
Really?
Yeah,
in the 1920s and 30s?
In the 30s, absolutely.
Wow.
Because one thing about it is it really, really works. It is, quote, the magic pill. You could die, but apart from the death and side effects, it really helps you burn fat without exercise.
I know some people are going, you know what, that is a risk that I'm prepared to take. But all jokes aside, Steve, obviously the risk of death here is pretty bad. I've heard that people, when they take it, it becomes so superheated, that's how it kills you. Is that correct?
It's
it basically cooks you from the inside.
It does cook you to death. It raises heat in the body, and it does it via a mechanism through these proteins that we have, and there are 5 different types of them, and they're called uncoupling proteins.
Wow.
And
even I know about that, Steve.
Yes.
That is the magic. That's what you want to, burn body fat.
Exactly. And what happens is, if you imagine the mitochondria where you make all your energy, when a proton or a H+ ion goes in there, it makes ATP, energy, and that's good. But there's another little pathway called uncoupling proteins, only discovered in the late 70s, where they let protons in there, and the side effect of letting the proton in is you generate a massive amount of heat without producing energy.
So thermogenesis?
Thermogenesis. So it's very similar to driving down the highway with your handbrake on and driving. You'll burn more fuel, you'll create more heat in the engine, and that's exactly what happens. It's an uncoupling protein, uncouples the mitochondrial electron transfer chain, so you get a burning of heat, and then you obviously by driving down the highway, you burn more fuel. But a lot of people want to burn more fuel.
So how do you do that naturally without using drugs, Steve?
You can exercise.
Yep.
Or you can go on a ketogenic diet,
Yep.
or you can take supplements like conjugated linoleic acid.
That also all helps with that.
Absolutely. CLA is the most important one. That's why the AMV and that works so well for fat loss. Or one of the reasons. There's a few others.
Yeah. But it won't kill you. And obviously I'd imagine that the difference between using, say, CLA to using something like the DNP is probably a magnitude of many, many times.
A lot. This one is vastly more effective at doing that. Now, when I say effective, there's massive side effects. But
well, let's talk about the good stuff first, and then we'll get into the bad stuff.
Sure.
So is there any other good stuff about it? Has there been any reports of exactly, how much weight an average person could... Is there any statistical information you can share?
Basically, DNP works if you just take a moderate dose, which is 100 milligrams.
Right.
It increases your basal metabolic rate by 11%. Now, you might think, 11%. But if you think of your calorie intake per day is, say, 2,000, then you're going to burn an extra 200 plus calories for doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, right.
And that's a low dose.
How many calories in a kilo of fat?
A gram of fat has 9 calories.
Yep.
And so if you can add it up from there, so let's round it off to 10.
Yep.
Then you can burn 20 grams of fat, and that's just straight off the top of it. And then if you multiply those tablets, you can take up to, 17 kilojoules. I'll get to a story about that. But you take them multiple times a day. Yeah. So you actually multiply the effect.
It's about 9,000 calories in a kilo of fat, correct?
Yeah, about that.
So therefore, if you're getting 200 calories extra, burned. So
that's some of it.
Yeah.
But it also burns other things too in the body, not just fat. It burns everything. So it's highly, and you got to do it every day, and it works through the night.
Right.
So you're burning fat pretty much all the day. So your basal metabolic rate goes up, but then that's only part of the story, because uncoupling protein is actually just the generation of heat without burning anything. So most of your fat loss comes just by uncoupling the proteins, which allows the protons to leak into the mitochondria, and then you get this massive increase in heat. So you get a thermogenic effects without increasing your basal metabolic rate.
Yeah, right.
So you just overheat. And of course, the side effect of that is you overheat and die. But if you can get yourself to a temperature of about 39 and induce like a fever effect, you'll burn an extraordinary amount of fat over a few weeks.
Wow.
Now, it works dramatically. It was over the counter. It was sold over the counter in 1933.
Right.
You get it from a pharmacy.
And why did they stop selling it? See?
Oh, well, you can guess.
Deaths?
Yeah, a few deaths because it was found not fit for human consumption by the federal FDA, basically, in 1938. And basically, therefore, it was taken off the shelves there. And that was the side effect of that. But there is good news for those who want to get it. It was marketed as Mitcal in 1981 in a private practice in America.
How on earth can it be banned in the 1930s but yet make a revival in the 1980s?
Because the doctor did illegally. He ended up in jail. But he got remarkable results with it, which opened up that argument again about, okay, because if it was banned in 1938, records weren't very good back then.
Sure.
But because this doctor was prescribing it in the 80s and got these remarkable weight loss, it is a magic pill.
Yeah.
You know, side effects, but it's a magic pill for weight loss. So he used it and got all these remarkable results, had thousands of clients because he was dosing it out, had minimal side effects, but when he was busted, he was
shut down.
He was in trouble. So yeah,
that's a shame in a way. I mean, Steve, is it a synthetic compound? I mean, do you know? Yep, it is.
Synthetic compounds, and basically by activating uncoupling protein, and the way it works is it's like you're exercising 24 hours a day.
Wow. But surely, I mean, even with your central nervous system, there's probably some other things that we need to discuss or understand. I don't know if it even, because it's been banned, they probably haven't looked into it, but there would be additional, there's always the piper to pay.
Yes.
You know what I mean, Steve? I mean, sure, you might get the weight loss, and again, we can talk about people overheating, and effectively, I'd imagine you'd be looking at organ shutdown. Is that what happens?
Yeah, your brain overheats, and the fats in your lipids in your brain melt to a point where they lose their structural integrity, and then you get an influx of calcium ions and all that, and the brain dies.
Yep.
That's the end result of it. But before it dies, if you can remember, there's 5 uncoupling proteins.
Yep.
Number 4 and 5 are found in the brain.
Yep.
And if you can increase uncoupling proteins in the brain using other medicines or this medicine, it has been found in rats to help with Parkinson's disease.
Hang on.
You know
Steve,
what I mean?
You're not really talking me off it right now.
I know. I'm just telling you the facts, the literature. I mean, it's just one of those drugs that I think was abused.
Yep.
And still to this very day is abused and used by lots of people.
Yeah.
And
how are people still able to get it if effectively it was banned? I mean, and it was used in industry for killing bugs, which I find interesting. Was it sprayed on them or something, was it?
Yeah.
So therefore, is it just underground labs that have just
underground
found the
labs, absolutely. Right. It's like the illegal drugs, heroines, and they just make it. It's not, dinitrophenol is a very simple chemical.
Right.
Yeah, it's a phenolic, which is a phenol is a ring-based thing, and you add some chemicals, so it's pretty easy to make.
Steve, we need to be a good citizen here.
Yes.
Okay. Tell us the likelihood of death, or do you have any statistics on how many people have actually died from using this?
I do. Basically, there was someone who died who overdosed and tried to kill himself by taking 17 tablets at once. And they were found to contain quite high amounts of it, but basically they swallowed 17.
Why would you do that? If you're going to kill yourself, take something that's going to put you into a nice sleep and then slowly you're going to die, not cook yourself from the inside.
Yeah.
All right, well, forget about that, because the person was obviously using it off script. It's like Matt's statistics where they record a death because someone took a natural supplement, but he had a bullet hole in the middle of his chest.
Yes.
Yeah, but he died from taking vitamin C.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Let's discount that. What else?
There is another one. Someone had a 46-year-old man who died 21 hours after ingesting DMP, and it basically called profound hyperthermia, which is overheating dramatically, acute renal failure, too much calcium in the blood, hyperkalemia, and metabolic acidosis from the hypermetabolism. He overdosed on it because he thought he was taking 100 milligrams and it was a 360 milligram tablet.
Again, you're still not scaring me, Steve, because a lot of the guys that are out there that are pushing the envelope would go, well, I'm not an idiot. Yeah. So, I mean, again, the issues that could come is if it's incorrectly labelled, if it's too strong and you took it. I mean, again, that's the thing with not counterfeit, but non-governed manufacture, illegal, street, labs and all the rest of it. Is that potentially you could get a stronger batch than what you know, and you could take more, and then you could hurt yourself.
Yes, exactly.
But
Same thing happened.
Look, those things aren't scary to me,
Finished
Steve.
bodybuilder, went to jail. Well, someone went to jail. He went to hospital and
Yeah.
survived because he took 380 milligrams of it. He just got fever
Right.
and survived.
Yeah.
So again, it was used for a lot of years, and it was just, the problem is it's the dose of it.
We've done one of these before, Steve, where you said, oh, this is really scary, you shouldn't use it. And I'm listening to that going, that's not putting anybody off, especially if they're at the high end of bodybuilding. I mean, we've probably done a disservice. People are probably going to go and look for it now.
Well, this is just what the studies say.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
So, again, be very aware that it can obviously get yourself into some trouble with this sort of stuff. I mean, I've had some friends of mine use this before many years ago. I didn't ask them too much about it, but he had to sleep with the fan on in the middle of winter with nothing, because he was basically felt like he was just in an oven. So, but yeah, certainly don't do it, kids.
Yeah, there is. And apart from the overheating, nausea and vomiting, if you take too much, you can get an irregular heart rate, which is problematic if you get you overheat because your heart rate goes too high. And if you've got a bad heart.
Yeah, well, undiagnosed heart conditions all the time, like long OT?
Long ST.
Long ST.
Yeah. And you could also have an aneurysm, which is a bulge in say, aortic aneurysm.
Sure.
Which means that if you get too much pressure through there, then you'd burst.
You're putting your body under a lot of stress. So natural ways to be able to replicate DMP: exercise.
Yes. CLA.
Anything else, Steve, that people could do? I mean, again, it's not going to be the same effects, but I mean, it's going to help.
Yep, and the ketogenic diet increases mitochondrial uncoupling, and that was a 2004. Exercise increased uncoupling protein 2, which is the one found in your muscles. Yep. 3 is in your muscles too. 1 is found in your brown and white fat.
Right.
So if you ever wondered why an animal like a bear can hibernate all winter and not die of frostbite in the snow, it's because he's got massive amounts of uncoupling protein 1. Yep. So his brown fat becomes it just heats up all winter.
Is that why it's also, they say that when you put on the weight, like for baby weight, for example, if you can take it off in the first 12 months, it's easier to burn. After that period of time, it kind of converts from that brown fat more to that white fat, which becomes poor blood supply, less stored energy per se. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's basically the brown fat is because there's a lot of mitochondria in it.
Yeah.
And that's why this process can occur. You can burn that brown fat because it has a lot of the mitochondria. Mitochondria is where it's all burnt. Yep. Also, fatty acids can increase thermogenesis and uncoupling protein. Yep. So if you are on a higher fat diet, like the classic one was the Atkins diet, and they couldn't figure out, they were eating all these calories and they lost more weight. And it was due to uncoupling protein upregulation in a natural health safe way. Yep. And that's one of the reasons why CLA is the most potent one to do that.
And Steve, we're going to do more of the performance podcast as well too. And one of the things I want to talk to you about, and this is a side note, is the consumption of carbohydrates around training times and the benefit for improved muscle conditioning. So even though I like the ketogenic diet in moderation from time to time, and some people, it does not work for Tony because her mitochondrial, the way that her mitochondria is working at the moment, she's got the tryptophan steal. So I mean, again, if people say keto, and it's not working for you, well, you might not be geared up to do it properly, Steve.
Yeah, that's right, and it is tougher. So this is where the CLA could work really well. So that's the uncoupling protein. Just remember, there's 5 types. The one's found in the fat, 2 and 3 in the muscles, 4 and 5 in the brain. Right. And if you activate it in the brain, it's good for the brain. Yep. Now, the reason why it's activated during exercise is, yes, that's what heats you up, but the actual reason it does it is in the presence of free radicals. So when you exercise, you produce more free radicals, and your body increases uncoupling protein, because when the hydrogen binds with the oxygen, the free radical oxygen, it forms H2O or water. Yep. So it neutralizes free radicals. So that's why exercise is another reason why it's so good for you. It acts as an antioxidant as well as burning fat.
I was going to say, in terms of then, oxidative stress, which can, consumption of more oxygen, even when you're breathing heavy and all the rest of it. But antioxidants, naturally, good diet, obviously, Steve-O. I mean, that's going to help as well too. All right. Anything else about DMP before we move on?
Well, no, that's interesting about DMP. That's the main story about DMP. It just works on uncoupling proteins throughout the body, and it's not regulated. Like it can be. It's got a. You can't really overdose on ketogenic diet or CLA, but you can overdose on this stuff, and there has been deaths reported to it.
It's not Steve, I
Yeah, I know.
was expecting more.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
You know,
well,
I mean, it's we know it's not good for you, and we're definitely not advocating it, but it's not as scary as I thought it could be.
No, it's like anything. It's dose dependent. The only difference between a drug and a toxin is the dose. If you take a terrible drug, even a low dose, it should be fine for you.
Yeah.
You know, it just depends on the dose. It really comes down to it. This thing has a very easy ways to abuse it, you know, because you want to burn more fat, you just take more of it, and it works. It's not like, oh, I'm taking this stuff and it doesn't work. This works.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. So it's easy to overdose on because you want to burn more fat.
Sure. Well, just take CLA and that should get you some of the way to the results that you get. Yep.
Exercise, of course.
And exercise, of course.
But we're not here to talk about that.
No.
Forget that.
Clenbuterol.
Let's cheat. Yeah, clenbuterol.
Okay, so this is another one that's used again, completely illegal for people to take. So is DMP, by the way. We just want to mention that. It's completely illegal.
Totally illegal.
But clenbuterol, Steve-O, and again, utilised normally in the racing industry and specifically for as a bronchial dilator for horses, right?
For horses.
And now, my understanding is that horses can't even take it before races because it gives them an unfair advantage. Is that correct?
It does, yeah. It's banned for horse racing, but it actually is a very good veterinary drug for animals with asthma.
Right.
And it works on the beta adrenergic receptors, and this means it's a bronchodilator because when you release adrenaline, which is similar to this thing, it's not a steroid, but this thing.
Sure.
And it dilates the bronchioles to let more air in when you're puffing and running and that sort of thing. And this does it chemically. So it's very, very good for that. The other interesting thing, it binds to the same receptors as the adrenaline receptor, but actually produces a greater effect for fat burning than adrenaline itself.
Right.
So
would you liken it to a lesser stimulant would be like caffeine?
Yeah, because that knocks out the adenosine receptors, which means you get more adrenaline sort of activating. So, you know, and we can talk about caffeine aspirin combinations later.
The old ECA stack, Steve.
ECA stack, yeah. So that's in there too. So,
okay.
But basically this stuff's great. But the other interesting thing about this is that there are about 3 enzymes that break down muscle tissue. Clenbuterol inhibits them.
Yes, and that's why this clenbuterol has been a source for many bodybuilders, fitness figure, you know, because they want to diet and obviously restrict calories, but at the same time, they don't want to lose their muscle tissue, and that is the old oxymoron, you know. So clenbuterol, obviously a big tick in that camp, and that's why so many people use it.
Yeah, and, you know, it's banned around the world for things, but not for animals. So compared to the other one, you know, it's not as dangerous, let's face it, but it can increase the basal metabolic rate as well. But it preserves muscle tissue, and that's like people take this when they're cutting down for an event, a bodybuilding show, because, you know, the idea of cutting is to, you know, get rid of all the fat, but as a side effect, you eat less food and you do lose some muscle. Well, clenbuterol, or clen as they call it, or bute is another name, that actually holds on to your muscle. So it is quite an interesting one. So it's extraordinarily good when you're cutting down.
But what are the negatives, Steve-O? Hit me with it.
Well, it increases your basal metabolic rate again by 10%, and it works like adrenaline. So on this stuff, you can't sleep on it because it activates the adrenal receptors. Increases basal metabolic rate, so you end up getting hot again by about 10%. And also, of course, it has an effect by which it becomes resistant in the body. So you actually have to up the dose more, which is a bit scary. So they usually take it cycling on or cycling off. But yeah, it is dangerous. It has had side effects. People have died from overdosing it.
Yeah, I had a friend that died from overdosing.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Basically, stripped out all the fat. Also, I know it causes a problem with taurine, which can also affect the heart as well too. So, you know, look, when I was younger and I was more interested in aesthetics than health, I did use it, Steve. And
how did you feel on it?
Incredibly angry. Really cranky, like a real asshole. You know, all the time it really changed my disposition. And don't say, oh, it was because you're taking other things, because at that stage I wasn't. I was just taking that on its own. And got the shakes really bad. Yeah. Like really bad. Like and you just said felt anxious and you know, that's kind of the way that I felt. Friend, through a combination of things, so you can't blame it purely on the drug, but died of a arterial rupture, which the amounts of fats that were in the bloodstream were, I think, you know, so low, and they actually put it down to the fact that it was a clenbuterol. I don't know and that could have been a lifestyle that was just passed through the community as well too. So, but yeah, I know it does have an impact on taurine as well too, it can cause quite severe cramps. So that's why a lot of the guys took more oils, especially the omegas, but also then also added taurine in as well too.
Right, and that's why taurine's added to stimulant drinks
For the heart?
Yeah,
because taurine's the most abundant amino acid in the heart.
Yeah.
So, again, not something that I'd, again, recommend, but, again, it is used especially by a lot of the fitness community because it works.
Yeah, and it spikes, it causes arrhythmias and, of course, spikes your blood pressure. Side effects are nausea, nervousness, dizziness, drowsiness, dry mouth, facial flushing, headache, heartburn, increased sweating, insomnia, lightheadedness, muscle cramps, vomiting and chest pain.
Right.
They're listed side effects of it, so it's quite a scary side effect. It's funny, when I started working here and I found out all the athletes we were talking to were on clenbuterol, I'm thinking...
Not our athletes, I just want to say. This is because we go out and we talk and we want to help people, and again, we know that a lot of people are going to do this regardless of whether we say it's good or not, so we'd rather give people the information so, one, they're informed, and secondly, if they're noticing any of these things, that they can obviously take action about it. So.
I just thought, it's incredible that they're such good athletes despite having all this asthma, because that's what I thought they were taking it for. I didn't know the other effects for it. I just knew it was great for your lungs and all this sort of stuff. So it is a very scary stimulant and does have, it stuffs up your sleep too, of course, so you can't really sleep on it. Yep. It's got it depletes potassium too, which can cause heart problems too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that's another problem with it.
Do you think that could have been part of the problem with the arterial rupture?
Yep.
Steve-O?
Yep. And it depletes taurine, as you correctly pointed out.
Yep.
So very, very scary. There's a few people, it's banned by WADA and all this sort of stuff, IOC and that, but there's been some countries that have been found, like some Mexican soccer players.
They use it?
They use it.
Well, of course. I mean, if the number one reason to use it is to increase the capacity of the lungs, in a way, it's almost like a mini EPO, which is effectively, this is what a lot of cyclists used to use. I think, is that what Lance Armstrong got done for as well too?
Erythropoietin and blood doping he got busted for.
Because that basically gives you more red blood cells and a greater capacity to hold oxygen. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically, and this is more of a performance cheat, but if you give blood, your body will make more red blood cells too.
And then you put the blood back in again.
Yeah, and you got loads of them, and the blood's very thick, but if you don't die of clot, then you'll get through the race and probably win.
Right, and clenbuterol works on improving the lung
function.
Which increases the ability to take in more oxygen. And does it also increase the ability to remove or pant out acid, Steve?
Yep, CO2. So you much
less lactate. So your lactate threshold's going to go up, which means you can exercise for longer before lactic acid, lactate starts building up in the muscles.
Yeah, it's a good way to treat. The puff is a salbuterol, which is a very similar sort of action, but it's topical in the lungs and it's fine.
Right, and that doesn't have the same impact on fat loss.
No,
that clenbuterol
it's good for your lungs.
Yeah,
but obviously they're the blue puffers that every man needs.
Good for your lungs. Interesting though.
Oh,
it's still right. I mean, it's still
not
synthetic,
good for your lungs.
Correct? No.
Yeah. No, because
it gives you that effect, but long-term effect of using steroids, which is what it is, Steve, on the lungs, must have a bad effect.
Bad ones, and the reason why a lot of people their lungs spasm because they get say an allergy going in there. If you open up the allergens, then the allergens are going deeper.
Right.
And so long you don't use these things as I mean they do. Asthmatics use them all the time. But you should really only use them very acutely and just to stop you from, having an asthma attack. But people use them, for sporting events and all sorts of things.
Better off building up lung capacity. Swimming, I know, is a really popular one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're talking about cheating today, so that's another one you could add to the cheating list.
From a natural point of view, as far as clenbuterol is concerned, peppermint?
Yeah, peppermint's excellent.
Yeah.
And for fat loss, again, CLA is good for this too. So you've got all these sorts of agents that stimulate fat burning and clenbuterol with all those side effects.
Yep.
The other thing about this is when you get all those side effects, you don't train as hard if you're feeling pretty ordinary.
Yeah, sure.
So you've got to weigh that up too, even if you're wanting to take it.
And look, long term, it's not sustainable and it costs a lot. It's funny,
Is
so it? Well, I don't know if it's it depends, I guess. But
how did you get your hands on it? I mean, without detailing. Is it just internet, or you can say a word, or
black market through someone who knew someone who knew someone who knew someone? So it's just one of those things. Again, I'm not. Well, some of the stuff that I did when I was younger, I just didn't care, Steve. So I'd just give anything a crack. I was interested to find out what the results would be. So and look, it did work, but I hated it. Tony wouldn't come near me when I was on it because it
Ooh.
was horrible. And I just felt jittery and anxious the entire time. And for me, it just wasn't worth it. So I only used it a couple of times.
Look, it's pretty incredible stuff, and it works like, you know, binding to the adrenal receptors, and that's pretty scary. But I've got another drug for you anyway, that you can go right now to an Australian doctor and legally get a prescription for it.
Duramine.
Yes.
Yep.
Duramide or phentamine, which
Very
is
popular. I mean, what's the usage like
huge
in Australia? Do you have any statistics on that?
It was huge. It was like there was, you know, over 1 million prescriptions written last year for it
In Australia?
in Australia.
Wow.
Which I thought there would be more.
1 in 20 people.
Well, probably not, because they get repeat prescriptions.
Ah, okay, gotcha.
But, you know, it is extraordinarily common, and it's completely legal. But if I can take you back to the 90s, when there was a drug out called Fen-Phen. Have you
I
heard of
remember that, yes.
Yeah. It's fenfluramine with phentamine, which is the and two drugs. One's a serotonergic drug and one is an adrenergic drug. And when you combine them, you get appetite reduction and increased metabolism.
Wow.
So it was great for those, when I say great, I'll qualify that and say, for those people who wanted to lose weight but couldn't because they just kept eating, you know.
Yep.
So it was a perfect drug 20 years ago that caused them to lose a lot of weight and to regulate their appetite. Are you ready for the but?
Yep.
Yeah, it killed a lot of people. But apart from that, it worked really well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's permanent weight loss, Steve.
Yeah. It caused potentially fatal pulmonary hypertension, which is blood pressure through your lungs, and heart valve problems, which caused it to be withdrawn from the market a few years later. And there was lawsuits of up to $13 billion due to the damages to these drugs.
Wow.
So a lot of people were affected by it.
It's funny, you know, oftentimes a lot of the over-the-counter prescription medicine, which seems to be available now or in the recent past, seems to persist into the marketplace with far worse side effects than some of the other stuff we've been talking about.
And this is like, you got to remember that if drugs have severe side effects and it'll cure your cancer, say, you know, like chemo, you know, potentially you can survive a cancer that you may not survive. So you're happy to put up with the feeling like crap and hair falling out, terrible side effects. This is just to lose a few pounds. Let's face it, you know, which you can typically do other ways. Now, I know we'll get arguments about that, but really it's for people to lose weight. And this is, you know, this is a valid prescription that they gave out and killed people by, you know, destroying their heart valves.
Wow. Was there an estimate of how many people died from taking that?
They didn't really sort of say that.
But if they paid out $13 billion, it must
$billion.
have been a truckload.
Yeah, but here's some good news for you, that the phentamine was found, the one that Duramide was found not to have not too many problems. It works on the adrenaline receptors, so it's like a stimulant.
Yep.
It's
like speed, Steve, for people who understand amphetamines. So problem is diminishing returns for sure.
Very much so, and it's extremely addictive.
Right.
The amphetamines,
because it would give you a high, right? I mean, you'd feel pretty good on it.
Oh, you feel great on it.
Yeah.
The only problem is it's got an extraordinarily long half-life. Now, that's how long the drug hangs around the body.
Yeah.
So you only need to dose it once a day. The problem is it lasts for about 25 hours in the system, so almost everyone on this drug gets insomnia.
Wow.
Yep. And it's a completely legal amphetamine.
Why can't they speed up the half-life to 12 hours or something like that?
Well, yeah, it's just the chemical drug that they patented, and you know, it works. I read the marketing blurb on it. It says this is fantastic. It'll burn sleep fat as you during the day and at night.
While you sleep, that's because you're not sleeping. You're on the treadmill, like a hamster.
Yeah. And so it's not really. I mean, I love the marketing thing, and also amphetamines they do reduce your appetite.
Sure. But as we know as well too, you've got to take more and more because your body will build up a tolerance to it. And this is the thing with anything realistically, is that negative feedback loops prevent the body from staying out of homeostasis for too long, which is why these things are, you know, a short-term fix. Unless it comes from a natural compound or is naturally going to just benefit, you know, your diet or your nutrition, it's not smart.
Another great side effect of phentamine, you're going to love this one, is it grows your prostate.
Even in women?
I'm giving a graphical one. No, in men.
What about women that choose to identify as men?
Well, it increases dihydrotestosterone, testosterone, so they'll increase their masculinity as well.
Really? Can that have a virilization effect in women?
Yes.
Wow.
Very much so.
What? Duramine?
Duramine.
Wow.
Yeah, so it stuffs up your hormones as well. Really quite dramatically, and there's papers in 2018 they're just finding this out now.
So if guys are taking it, definitely watch out for the enlarged prostate, your hair starting to shed. For females, watch out that your voice doesn't drop, that you don't potentially get hirsutism, Steve?
Yep,
Could that be,
hirsutism.
and PCOS?
Yeah, PCOS.
And definitely a largening of the clitoris.
Absolutely, you get engorgement of the clitoris. The only other, the good news about that is you probably won't get that far if you take this drug for too long, because there are other side effects that'll kill you.
Right.
It increases intracellular hemorrhages or strokes.
Wow.
Yep.
Again, this sounds scarier than what the bloody DMP sounds.
A little bit. I mean, the reason why they know more about this, because it's a legal drug. So maybe this evidence...
That's actually a really good point.
They probably...
With DMP specifically, because it's banned, there's probably not as many reported cases. People probably aren't using it as much. So that's actually a really good point, Steve.
And if they use it, they probably, they
lie
die.
about
it. Yeah, it's not exactly. This stuff is well known. It's published. So you do increase with aneurysms in the brain and strokes. And the reason for that is because if you think of an amphetamine, it peps you up.
Yep.
Which is, you feel fantastic on it, but it increases brain circulation to the point where you get intracranial pressures.
Wow.
And you get strokes.
Does it have an impact on serotonin levels as well too, Steve?
It drives up serotonin levels.
So therefore, if you exhaust your serotonin levels, that could lead to other things like depression if you're predisposed to it?
Absolutely. Depression is one of the side effects. There's a whole lot of side effects here, apart from the nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, blah, blah, blah. One of the worst ones here is impotence. Because you can
kill me.
For me,
yeah.
I just went. Of course, high blood pressures, palpitations, hyperactivity, sleep problems, and restlessness. So you get an incredible headache, tremors, dizziness, and increased or decreased interest in sex. So it just alters your sex depending on your hormones.
I was going to say DHT potentially could actually improve because you need that to.
Yeah, it's a very potent androgen.
Well, yeah.
So
right.
Again, but this is given out quite willy-nilly is not the right word, but you got to remember it's actually given out quite regularly.
The problem is as well too. I was talking to Dale, one of the guys that works here, and she was saying friends of hers would ask their fat friends to go in, get a prescription for it, so they could knock off 3 or 4 kilos.
Yeah.
In a short period of time, and they'll take it. Because the doctor wouldn't prescribe it to them. That's why they're asking their friends to go get them and use them off script. So,
and just going to bat for the doctors a little bit here is the doctor says, have you, the 15-minute consult, they'll say, have you tried diet and exercise? The fat person says, yes. I have. Okay, well, here's something extra.
Yep.
There's this one and my favourite drug, which is Xenical, the other one.
Yeah. You love it, Steve.
Love it. It's a fantastic drug to take and again, prescription drug, you can get it. It's pretty simple mechanism.
Well, we've mentioned it before. Xenical mimics. Just before we get into that, so as far as Duramine is concerned, the natural things that you could take, which aren't going to have the negative side effects, Steve, is caffeine the closest.
Caffeine's close. Aspirin.
Because it increases
ECA
stack.
Yeah, so the ECA stack.
But that also includes ephedrine or Meihuang which is now banned in I think most of the West.
Yep.
But caffeine and aspirin together it has some effect. So the aspirin prolongs the half-life of the caffeine.
Caffeine absolutely does. So it's great to take, when I say great, in the context of this podcast, it's great to take aspirin before you train with your caffeine because it's an anti-inflammatory as well.
Yep.
So it relieves a bit of pain so you can train harder for longer.
Problem is, Steve, if you have a muscle tear, you get bruising. Boxers can't use aspirin. Yeah. Anybody doing any sort of contact sport, whether you're playing rugby or what have you, even football, anywhere where you can get potentially bruised or you've got trauma in terms of contact with other people or things, you should avoid it because especially if you get a severe injury, the impact of that bleeding, it just doesn't stop. It don't clot. So
it doesn't clot. No.
So you can effectively have some serious issues if you take aspirin before an event where you get injured.
Sport.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, this is in the context of this website, where there's lots of side effects to these things.
Yeah,
this is just one of the only problem with the aspirin and caffeine is you can get them from pretty much a supermarket.
Sure, you can.
And you can just go, I'll take some No-Dos, the caffeine, and I'll get the Aspro Clear, and I'll swallow a caffeine pill in the morning or 3 or 4, and then I'll drink down 2 or 3 aspirins, and then I'll feel great, and I'll go for that run, gym, whatever it is. And so this is in this context, this is quite a scary combination because there are massive side effects to that.
Yep.
I mean, crazy stuff. But it's still probably not as bad as the side effects of Xenical.
Well, Xenical is interesting. And again, I like to look at what science has done to, mimic nature, if that makes sense. Now, chitosan, is probably the natural equivalent, which was
Yeah.
all the rage back in the 90s. Do you remember
Yeah.
when that came out?
Yeah.
And so it's effectively positively charged. It's fat negative or positively charged?
It's positively charged.
Right, so chitosan is negatively charged. So what it would do is it effectively attract fat molecules to it. So the whole idea is that you could eat what you wanted within reason, without changing your lifestyle, but lose weight. The problem with that I always saw, and there was a couple of problems with chitosan, and it certainly wasn't as effective as Xenical at attracting that fat, is that firstly, all your fat-soluble vitamins were going to get sucked up at the same time, right?
Of course they were.
That was number one. Number two was that if you had a particularly fatty meal and you took the stuff, and I'm talking more Xenical here than the chitosan, that you'd get the fantastic side effect of anal leakage, anal seepage, which you mentioned before.
Anal seepage, yeah, that's an interesting side effect. They do come with these special adult nappies now, or diapers for the Americans, so you can take your Xenical and...
do they sell them with it?
No, you get them at the pharmacy with them. It's recommended that you have diapers on or nappies on during the day if you're an adult and you're on this.
And you're consuming high amounts of fat.
Yeah, and I'm trying not to look over there because our camera guy's freaking out of it.
Yeah.
There is another side effect, and you can explain how this works. It says the side effect, and I'm not joking, gas with discharge. What does that mean, Jeff?
Well, brown tunnel ducks turn into more like brown bears. Is that
and here's the top one: oily spotting on underwear, anal seepage.
Oily spotting on underwear, anal seepage. Well, I mean, that's probably not something you're going to put on your Tinder page, is it?
Now, gas with discharge, the worst thing about it is that Xenical makes you fart more.
Yeah.
So you're going to get more of the discharge. There's also another minor
follow
side
through,
effect.
and that's the concern, Steve. I mean, everyone farts, but I mean, it's the follow through that especially that's what you don't want, right?
No, you don't want that. But there's more bad news coming. It's actually the inability to control bowel movements is another one.
Oh, so, every time you drop one of these bombs, potentially a log can be following out, and you've got no control over that.
Absolutely, because it's not a log; it's actually a liquidy.
Splatter.
It's a Bristol stool chart, right up there as one, like a very soft one. Also, unfortunately, another side effect.
I think the technical term for that, Steve, I'm sorry, is called a shart, actually.
Shart, that's it. Yeah, we've got to keep the science up here.
Yeah.
Also, you get an increased number of bowel movements along with all those other side effects.
Oh.
So you get more of all this happening.
More regular sharts.
You also
they should use that as their marketing slogan.
Absolutely.
They don't even have to pay for that.
Another one here is, of course, diarrhea, obviously, and vomiting. So just in case...
Both ends.
Yeah, both ends.
I think they call that stereo.
Yeah, and there's another both ends things. You get stomach pain as well as rectal pain with this drug.
Fantastic.
So...
Just when with Xenical, you can have it all.
You can have it all.
I should be head of their marketing.
But you know what? You're going to go to the gym and you're going to also suffer weakness. That's another side effect.
See,
it's just getting bad. You get anal itching, which is a little bit of a problem too. Sorry to be so graphic.
Yeah.
And you get...
There's nothing worse than when you've got an itchy bum and you're in a meeting, and you can't get out and you really need to, just give the ring a bit of a scratch.
It's just awful.
So imagine having that all the time. You've got a business meeting.
Yeah.
You're sharting and feel like spewing and you want to itch your bum hole.
Look, I'm trying to always put a positive spin. At least it'll be comfortable in your bum when you wear the nappy. It's a bit softer.
Oh, Steve, it doesn't stop. I don't take Xenical and I still wear those now.
Yeah.
They are downy soft.
They are.
Just as per the instructions.
They
are
awesome.
They're not lying.
Here's the weirdest side effect. You get problems with your teeth or gums. I can't even work that out. It's like I can't even think of the biochemical.
Is that because you're not getting enough of the essential fats into your diet?
Probably. It's weird. You're getting all sorts of other stuff. I mean, but my favourite one, of course, is you get also urgent bowel movements. So you don't know they're coming and then they come because there's no the receptors on your rectum are not being activated because it's a soft stool. So you go, I have to go to the loo. Oh, too late.
Did I ever tell you the story about the first time that I had lentils?
No.
So way back in the day when I was, I was in grade 12, and I had to go and get a job. And I went and got a job at the Snow Deli. I think I can say this because they're not in business anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like just a deli at the shopping centre. And this was at the Logan Hyperdome, which is just like, for American friends, it's like the mall, like the big mall. And I don't know how I got the job because I'm shocking at weighing things out. Anyway, I got the job. And I'm sitting there, and before I went, Mum said, "Oh, look, let me get you some lunch before you go." So she made me a big bowl of lentil soup. Now, I'd never had lentils before.
Sure.
Right? And so I'd eaten it, and I went straight to work, and I was at work for probably about half an hour or so. And I feel like I'd been on Xenical.
Right.
Because the gases blew, and all of a sudden, I was literally sprinting through the mall looking for the nearest toilet. I think I made it there with literally half a second to spare. And you know what, Steve? You know that I was desperate because, you know, I have never, ever used a public toilet.
Really?
Never.
That's
and
amazing.
do you know why? This is really funny. Because when I was young, my mum's Scottish, and my mum's mum said, don't go to the dentist because they'll hurt you. So as a result, she's had most of her teeth removed, right?
Of course.
Don't go in the water, you'll drown. So she never learned how to swim. So to this day, she can't swim, right?
Wow.
So on my mum's side was this extreme fear, right? Anyway, to cut a long story short. So I never went to public toilets because my mum showed me a picture of a woman who had extreme weight gain on her legs with these massive lumps, and I said, "Mum, how did you get this?" This is probably when I was about 4 or 5, and she says she got that from sitting on a public toilet seat.
Right.
To this day, I cannot use, mind you, I don't know if you go into this, especially for men. Women, you know, I know you have to wait a while, but typically it's a lot. Go into a men's toilets and you'd be happy to wait. I'd be happy to wait. I'd be happy to identify as a female to use.
Yeah, you can.
Well, I'm not. No, I'm not. I can't do it, Steve.
Can't do it?
No, it's not genuine. But I cannot use a public toilet because of that. But yeah, anyway.
That's amazing. So like a work toilet's fine?
So long as I know the people that have been in there.
Right.
Most people are filthy.
Even after Matt Legg's gone in there?
Oh, no, that's filthy. I use the girls' toilets here.
Yeah.
I do identify as a female here.
Sure.
Anyway,
it's funny because you mentioned those lumps on the legs and how do women get those. We can remove them now.
how?
Liposuction.
Wow. Oh, master segue. Very nice, Steve-O. So,
Awesome.
liposuction. Well, this was the miracle. This was modern medicine at its best, right? When do you know when liposuction first came to prominence?
1921.
1921.
21 was the first liposuction procedure.
And did it catch on immediately or
no? There was a problem with it.
A lot of people dying, I'd imagine. Infection?
It was just one guy who tried liposuction on a dancer's legs because she, was a dancer. And she didn't, nowadays they use a hollow tube that's about your little finger and they push it through your fat and it sucks it out. And it goes into a jar. But they didn't have any of that back then.
Her up.
Yeah. Well, what he did was he made an incision and he got a intrauterine curette, which is like a spoon with a hole in it that you grab, put up in the uterus. Sorry about this, everyone. Apologies. And you can scrape the uterus, that sort of thing.
And he did that to her fat cells.
He did that to her fat cells.
Oh, what happened?
And removed the fat. Well, he removed the fat.
And?
There was a infection and she had to have her legs amputated.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Apart from that. So it kind of it died in the bud after that for a little while.
Yeah.
Until 1976.
Right.
Yeah. Now let's get to the real liposuction.
Okay.
And that's when they discovered they put this tube in and it had a little sort of, it just powerfully sucked.
I've seen them do it, Steve. They're not gentle.
No, Dr. Doug used to do it every day in his suit and he used to lose heaps of weight.
And Dr. Doug is your father-in-law?
Yep.
And he used to get in there and seriously, man, it looks harder than what I do the vacuuming at home.
Oh, yeah, no.
Seriously, they're fully getting in there and really, grinding away with a good arm action. I mean, it looks like it'd do some serious damage, to be honest.
Well, it does do some serious damage and there's significant side effects, but I guess the $1 million question firstly is, does it work? And of course it does, because you end up with a jar of fat beside the bed that's come out of your butt or whatever.
As Matt says, he reckons great opportunity for biodiesel.
Absolutely. So does it work short term? Absolutely yes, because it was there and now it's there.
Yep.
And that's, I totally understand that appeal, because if you've got a bit that's hanging in there and I cheat, I use subcut. When I go for a run this morning, I did, so I cheat that way.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to get liposuction and spend thousands of dollars, but it would end up in a jar at the end of the day.
I've heard, Steve, a lot of side effects were uneven. So in other words, that's a big one. And some fat cells seem to almost magically reappear in a very short period of time.
Well, I'll get you back. There was a study done on that and whether it does reappear. And basically they said, in conclusion, blah, 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 blah. But they said, however, this lipectomy, which is the removal of fat, effect seems to subside after 3 months with weight and fat regain in the long term. So that's what this big long-term study done on lipo. And after 3 months, the body adapts, and that was published in Obese Surgery 2019.
The body wants to do what the body wants to do. I mean, obviously correcting the issue through diet and exercise.
Yes.
Long-term is a strategy.
Yeah.
And look, there are aids that you can use, and your body may be deficient in things, which is obviously, you know, vitamins and minerals and other things. I mean, like Tony, she's got the bloody tryptophan still going on at the moment, which is really affecting her ATP. Awful. You know, it's good that she was able to do the OAT. The test that we have, which is the organic acid test. And she was able to obviously discover that. So then you can manage the condition. But for the average person who doesn't change anything, they expect to go in for surgery and that's it. Well, you know, the body, the status quo, the homeostasis, how the body is used to responding, storing fat in that area. Steve-o, surely.
I know.
I mean, I guess a lot of people go in with good intentions saying, I'm going to have lipo and I'm going to change it. I'm not going to go back to the way that I was. Problem is that if you haven't done it before, you're not going to do it after.
No, and this is the whole problem with this, is that the long term there is fat regain, because the individual who is, you know, and I've got some photos I'll show you a bit later about unevenness and that sort of thing, and we'll just describe them for people who listen. But there's some real problems with the side effects of this, and the fat does come back. But
unevenly. And that's the problem. There can be certain pockets where the fat doesn't return, and that then leads to a problem with symmetry. If that makes sense, you know? One leg could be smaller than the other, or the leg looks unusual where it doesn't form out properly. Yeah,
because a lot of people get their saddlebags, for those who, you know, on the side of the legs. There's lots of problems with that. The abdominal surgery is probably, you know, generally there's not so many side effects, but there's some really serious complications with abdominal liposuction. I don't know how to put this one over on the podcast. We spoke about it.
Oh.
No, it's...
No, you know what?
How would you describe that on a podcast to the listeners?
Is that a hairy beanbag I'm looking at?
That's a hairy beanbag.
Asshole.
Well, how do you describe that?
He made me look at it.
Don't point it to the camera.
It's a medical condition, Steve.
It is.
So, look, you know, this is... We'll put the warning at the front, Steve.
This rating of this podcast now gone.
Yeah, that looks like elephantitis.
Well, it is elephantitis in the nutitis, if you want to put it that way. It's where you get swelling edema in the scrotum, and they had to draw 300 mils of fluid off the scrotum. That's and of course...
Look, the funny thing is, Steve, well, not the funny thing, but the thing is that people need to be aware of it. Just because it involves the testicles, you know, or the genitals of a male, we need to talk about these things.
We do.
Because people need to be aware. But you got me, because I wasn't expecting that comment.
And there's a woman's abdomen heavily swollen due to the edema, which is swelling after liposuction. And there's also, of course, a lot of symmetry here where you get, and looks like it's, and we'll put this up in the place, you can see the side there where it's been all sucked out.
Again, guys, you're probably not going to be able to see that really quickly, but there's a big deformity in that leg. And what's really interesting on this one here, I think she actually looked pretty good beforehand. That's that one there, Steve-o. I actually think she looks pretty good.
Yeah.
You know,
I know.
It's funny, isn't it?
It is funny, and all required there is tone. I think, you know, that's like going to the gym, doing a few squats. Yeah. I mean, you got to remember, lipo is quite expensive. Yeah. And also, it doesn't last a long time. So it doesn't last a long time. It really, you know, shuts down. So
it's certainly not a good time, so I don't know why you'd waste your money on it.
It's scary. There is some other evidence where they tested, okay, let's say for those people that they lose a lot of fat, what happened to their cardiovascular risk factors? So they do a massive liposuction and suck off all their fat. It doesn't even help that. It says these data demonstrate the removal of a large amount of abdominal fat by using liposuction does not improve cardiovascular and metabolic risk factors.
But Steve, we already know that, because we know that subcutaneous fat is... I mean, it's not great, but it's not a problem. It's visceral fat.
Yes.
It's the fat that is around the organs. That's the dangerous stuff.
That is. And, of course, liposuction can't get in there and suck that out.
No.
You can't go through the abdominal, you know, the rectus abdominis.
And what's interesting, when you start exercising, where does the body typically take the fat from first?
Yeah, there.
The visceral, which is the dangerous one, the one that you can't see. So, and again, this is why you've just got to persist, and it's got to become a lifestyle. It's the same thing with dieting and all the rest of it. I mean, I appreciate, you know, smart people and people who are in the industry might do dieting for a comp, or might be doing it for a show or something like that. They understand their body, and they're probably looking to, you know, shave off a few kilos, or they do it over a long period of time. It becomes sustainable. For the average person, dieting isn't going to work. You just need to change your lifestyle, take a longer term view, rather than go to extreme measures like that.
And all of these we'll call extreme measures, all the drugs and everything, they are extreme. But the liposuction, you know, the fat grows back. The body adapts. It just says, okay, no, I need fat there, because if you let's say it works, but let's say you get every single last fat cell off your gut, and you it's all gone. There's no fat cells there. Then if you want to put fat on again, it goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it will be asymmetrical. So you may get fat hips or something as a guy. So, you've just lost one area and it comes back another area. So it doesn't work long term. So this leads you on to the next surgery you can have if you want is gastric sleeving.
Well, and look, becoming more and more popular. What concerns me about gastric sleeving is that, and this is from my uneducated opinion, Steve, is that it seems to be happening younger and younger now with like some really young cases without the ability and the maturity to actually tackle the fat gain through other means and methods. And look, as I said, and it's so funny, and I keep saying this, not against doctors. We've got some great doctors and nurses and healthcare practitioners out there in the Western circles. Their training is in that area, so that's what they know. They don't look outside of that. There are some great nutritionists and great dietitians, and there are some really poor ones as well too. But we've spoken about the fact that it's multifaceted. I mean, you can look at the gut microbiome, the changes to our food now, and the way that our firmicutes are overrunning our bacteroidetes. And again, I encourage you to go and listen to those podcasts to hear about that. The fact that we're hardwired to seek out sugars and fats and salts, and the amount of food that's out there that is like that, the overuse of pesticides, and it's all disrupting and changing our body's ability to be able to handle toxins. It's changing our gut microbiome. Our hormones are being affected, xenoestrogens. But you can't look at just one thing and say, right, that's the problem. Especially, and I have a great deal of sympathy for people who say, especially when they're genetically predispositioned, maybe they're an endomorphic personality to start with, their diet and nutrition is poor, maybe they were C-section babies, so they didn't get the initial burst of bugs. They're fighting an uphill battle, and they say, well, we've tried this, we've tried that. Yes, we've tried dieting. Okay, great. There's no other options. You must go to a gastric sleeve. And for my point, and why we created the podcast, Steve, is just to give people other mechanisms to exhaust every other angle before you go to an operation, because especially with this, once you do it, and it's pretty severe. You're cutting out a huge amount of your stomach.
Yeah, or you're putting your sleeve over it. There's a few of them.
Oh, well, and there's that one too. Sorry.
Yeah.
We just need to educate people, Steve, so that they're aware. And just like we're with these drugs, we're not for or against. I mean, again, I would advise people against it, but I mean, so long as people have done the education. People need the education.
They do.
They need this information.
And especially when you've got things like subcut and those sort of things you can take to lose a bit of fat off your waist here. The visceral fat, it comes off with exercise. But with the sleeves, it's a bit of a sad dichotomy in Medicare in Australia, whereas you can't get the weight loss surgery, we'll call it gastric sleeving surgery, until your BMI reaches, I think it's 32. In other words, you become quite overweight. So people who go in and check and they go, I'm at 31, guess what they do?
Go and eat.
Go and eat.
Yeah.
Junk food. Yeah. To get fat, so they qualify for the surgery.
Which ingrains into them a poor habit, and it also takes away a lot of accountability. And look, if you've had it, and if you've got friends, I'm not having a go, because the problem is that the education's not there, Steve. It's just, and that's what I'm saying. It's just one model. It's like, right, if you hit this threshold, great. You can go get surgery and your life's going to be a lot better for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a little bit scary that there's that sort of disincentive to lose weight. It's an incentive to put on weight so as you can get the procedure paid for. A little bit scary. It also, depending on the long-term follow-up, a lot of people learn to, because you basically can't drink much. You could drink that and a bit more, and that'd be about it because your stomach's full. So you feel full quicker afterwards, which sounds great. But then, you can still have that as a Coca-Cola.
Well, I was going to say, Steve, my biggest concern, and I hope you've got some stats here, I don't know if you do, sarcopenia, which is actually probably, especially as we get older, sarcopenia, which is effectively the loss of muscle is probably one of the hidden epidemics. And I believe in Australia that sarcopenia is actually becoming a disease this year. So like in the States, I think it's already 2016. I think it got listed as a disease. Yeah. But here in Australia, I think you were telling me that yesterday. Is that correct?
Ah, well, there's sarcopenia is a disease. That's why it's caused that. It's when you lose muscle mass. It's usually only recognised in people who are bedridden for a long period of time, or in wheelchair people that get super sarcopenia in their legs. But these people get sarcopenia as well.
Exactly.
Because they become protein deficient because they struggle to eat protein.
And I'd imagine as well too, not only that, that's right, because if they're going to have something to eat, well, I know I'm going to lose weight because I can reduce calories. You know what? I'm having ice creams and chocolate. Sure, they might not be able to, eat as much as they would, but then they're missing out on all the vitamins, all of the polyphenols, all of the other nutrients that you need in your diet, but you're losing weight. And this is the whole aesthetics movement versus health movement, and the stuff that we talk about, a lot is that, you might look amazing, but what's your true health like? And that's what concerns me.
It's scary. So gastric sleeving is either a good or bad idea depending on which angle you come from. There are studies showing, when I looked into it, I found that there are people who some of them had follow-ups and they'd lost a lot of weight, which was good because they were morbidly obese. They were plus 35 BMIs, and they got into the 20s because they couldn't eat anymore, or much more. So that's a win, but I'm a naturopath, so I want to be biased. I'd rather people say, right, let's work on your diet and exercise, instead of putting a sleeve over your stomach.
But I can hear a lot of people say, Steve, I did, Steve, I did. Yeah. But my problem is you probably didn't have all of the information you needed. But regardless, Steve, even if people have done it, so let's say people have done the gastric sleeve, then you really... You need to go the other way with your food. Yeah. You actually need to be more careful with what you eat rather than less.
Yeah, of course.
Don't go, hooray, all my problems are solved, I can eat whatever I want and I'm not going to get fat.
That's right.
No, you need to think of your long-term health. So you need to be consuming high quality, high nutrition-dense foods.
Absolutely.
Not empty calories like, junk food, chocolates and chips and popcorn and crap. You need good food. Yeah.
Because if you eat a bit of junk food as a normal stomach person, you can then have, you have chips or something at dinner, you can still have a meat and veg and, nutrition-wise catch up. So it's a bit scary that they have this sort of,
free license almost. Steve.
Pretty much.
It's a bad mindset, I think, that they can get into.
And instead of focusing on, they focus on all of a sudden weight and not body composition.
Yeah.
They need
Sarcopenia, lose muscle tissue, so they're flabby fat. I mean, yes, their BMIs come down, but the problem is long term, you lose that muscle tissue, especially as you get older as well too. You're going to really miss it when you get older.
Well, exactly, and of course you go to the other end of the scale, the Mick Galleys of the world, who are probably classically, and I'll use the term overweight, but they've got more muscle.
We know that the BMI doesn't work for people on either end of the spectrum, really. But I know Matt hates the BMI when he mentions it.
I do too, because it
one size does not fit all.
No, absolutely. So that's, gastric sleeving is a bit of an obvious one. But also...
Any other negative side effects, Steve?
Yeah, you get B12 deficiencies. Most of them do.
Yeah, right. That's
intrinsic factor, which require for B12 absorption.
Yep.
And because they eating steak or meats are not a good idea, and they're rich in B12.
Yep.
So there's multiple vitamin deficiencies. So if you've had it, get on the multi-food or something like that.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
multi-food doesn't have B12 in it, though, Steve.
No, it doesn't.
So, but the thing is that it's reabsorption. I think Matt said from the lower intestine, isn't it? So, and again, it's a natural process which seems to be being a bit disruptive. Now, I'm not a huge fan of synthetic vitamins. Short term. The funny thing is, and I've spoken to people about this, that come and said, "Oh, look, I'm taking this form of synthetic vitamin for short term. If there's an issue that your body needs to fix, I'm actually for it as a short term. But long term food and nutrition should come from, your vegetables and good quality, eating fresh and local and or natural sources as a staple. When you've got something that's a bit out, sure, a synthetic to create an effect, yes. But that's the problem with people with B12 is I think it's probably going to be synthetic, might be an idea for them.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, maybe, you may want to take a sublingual or go to the doctor and get an injection. That's what most of them do. In the studies, they say make sure you give them B12. And I'm thinking to myself, B12 shots. What about the other B vitamins?
Well, what's interesting though, Steve, I think most of those can be taken from the diet, but it's actually about, and I probably need Matt to talk because he was talking me through the whole B12 process, how it works in the body, and it almost sounds like, again, you've got a man-made intervention where you need another man-made intervention to sort of, and it's almost kind of a lot like the, we'll give you this medication, but the side effect is this, so we'll give you this medication to manage that, and that's got a side effect. And so then you go down this myriad of, you start off with one problem and you're taking 24 medications because of the side effects to counteract one another, and you become a walking pharmacy.
Absolutely.
And that's crazy. And that's the slippery slope that we,
it's scary because this happens a lot. I mean, there are medications that knock out B12 and many other vitamins, methotrexate knocks out folates and all sorts of, there's all sorts of drugs, sulfuramine, that knocks out B12, B9, folates. It's really scary, but I mean, all these things we've talked about today are all, shortcuts or bad cuts or, sometimes maybe good cuts for some people. But really, it is very, very scary, the whole process and what people do to lose that weight, from surgery to thousands of dollars of liposuction to very dangerous drugs instead of diet and exercise. And this is what people do to go through. Because you remember, they go to a doctor for, say, the gastric banding, and the doctor asks them the question, have you dieted and exercised? And they go, yes, I have.
Tick the box.
Tick a box. It's like, they don't say, well, how have you been to a naturopath?
Yep.
Have you tried a ketogenic diet? Have you tried, going to a gym, exercising? Because these are all, in my opinion, vastly less dangerous than going under the knife under a general anaesthetic and getting gastric band surgery. Yep. And it's long term too.
And, get your butt in the gym and lift some weights. And start changing your body composition through making more lean muscle tissue, which is going to give you an increase to your basal metabolic rate, where you're going to burn calories while you're in the gym as well too.
Yep.
Find exercise that you enjoy. If you don't want to run, don't run. Go swim. If you don't like swimming, take the dog for a walk.
Anything.
And again, all these things in combination are going to help. But the problem is, I think, Steve, is that people get confused. There's not a lot of information out there, or there's conflicting information, and people get confused and they give up and they said, well, I tried lemon juice diet. I tried liquid diet, or that didn't work, so therefore, I've tried it. Done it all. No, don't want to hear. Just give me the result.
Yep, I've tried. And I don't know how many people say I've tried every diet. And you see it on, like the extreme example is The Biggest Loser, the show, where they take people who have tried every diet and all that sort of thing, and then the first week they lose 5 kilos.
Yeah.
Because they're made to exercise and made to eat well, and they lose an extraordinary amount of weight.
Still, the problem I have with The Biggest Loser is it just looks at weight, doesn't look at body fat. So this is the problem. If you start training with weights specifically, your weight on the scale might stay the same. It may even increase slightly.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, your metabolic rate's kicking into a higher gear, and you're going to start losing body fat.
You increase uncoupling proteins.
Anyway, Steve-O, anything else? I think we've covered sort of the major ones.
That's pretty cool. I think it's a lot of info there.
And the thing is that we've said, at the end of the day, diet and exercise are the most important things. Quality nutrition through food is the most important things. Other little things that you can do that can help, certainly, obviously, supplementation can help. Taking ice baths, can help. Getting good quality sleep, increasing growth hormone can help. Training with weight, those are the sorts of things that you should focus on, which are maybe a bit slower, and takes a bit more effort on your part. But they're going to have the most benefit to your overall health. They're not dangerous for you. And if you create a program long term, they are going to make significant improvements. And taking something like an AMP, which has got the CLA in there, or T432, yes, the results may not be as quick as taking some of this stuff. But the nice thing is you're not going to put your health at risk. In fact, if anything, you're going to benefit. Like the T432 is a rich source of polyphenols, which actually has a really good effect on gut health. So it's multifaceted. It's not just targeting one thing. And this is what natural and nature-derived health should look like.
Absolutely, and this is what it's all about. So, hopefully today's been an interesting lesson in what to do and what not to do. It's just to try all the options. Not, before you go down these pathways, the lipos, the gastric bands, the powerful drugs, Xenical, which it's common. It's commonly.
I know it's common. Because I think a lot of the time people look for the shortcut, and ultimately, especially in today's busy society, I think that's the problem. I think people are going, and you show me, Steve, where low input, low activity, the easiest path is not normally give you the best result. What's that old saying? Take the path less traveled, because that's wherein lies success comes. And
exactly,
the hard yards, as they say. You know? Just think, what is it? Someone said, just think of sweat as your fat cells crying. So that's the sort of stuff you need to do.
That's what we want to talk about. Yeah. Oh, no, that's true. Look, it really is unbelievably true. And the great thing about diet and exercise is they won't make your testicles swell. That's important. We have to get that message across, because lipo can.
Yeah. No, not what we're
in rare
after.
cases, but you don't want that.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Sarah.
That's all that we've got time for today. All right, and thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.
Okay.
All right.
See you guys.
Bye.
That it?
Yes, that's a YMCA.
CE. I'm that old. I remember that. 1980. It's hilarious.
I'm the first CEO jellyfish.
Yes.
I choose to identify as a jellyfish.
Jellyfish don't have bum holes, you know. They regurgitate their food.